Hi, I'm Beth Martinez, Chief of Staff and Strategic Planning for Fort Bend ISD, and I'm going to provide an update on where we have been with the attendance boundary planning process and what our next steps are. I'll also be sharing the presentation with Scott Leopold from Cooperative Strategies, who will lead you through the details of the various boundary options in each of these scenarios. During this presentation, I'll share information about the boundary planning timeline, more details about our community engagement process, and Scott will provide detailed information about the various boundary options we're sharing with the community for feedback during the week of December 10th. We'll also discuss next steps in the planning process. Earlier this fall, we began the attendance boundary planning process associated with establishing the attendance boundary for Elementary 51 in the Aliana community and for balancing high school enrollment in the southeast portion of the district. To date, we have engaged with focus groups from both of these areas of the district. Prior to the Thanksgiving break, we launched the application process for 3 focus groups, one for Elementary 51, another for Elementary School 53 or classroom additions at Austin Parkway, Commonwealth Elementary, and Settlers Way Elementary to relieve Commonwealth Elementary overutilization and balance enrollment in the central portion of the district, as well as the focus group for balancing high school enrollment in the southeast portion of the district. On Friday before the break, we notified principals and parents in the central portion of the district that we would be delaying the boundary planning process for this area until we have a clear path forward regarding land negotiations for Elementary 53. We're currently in the feedback phase of the planning process, which will take us through January 2nd, 2019. During November, we recruited focus group members from the elementary school attendance areas in proximity to Elementary School 51, and from each of the high schools in the southeast portion of the district, Elkins, Hightower, Marshall, Ridgepoint, and Willow Ridge. Staff reviewed the focus group applications and selected members based on objective criteria, feedback from references, and to ensure the group reflected the geographic makeup of the area. For example, it was important that the focus group for Elementary 51 included representation from a neighborhood that was in very close proximity to Elementary School 51, but in the current Lakeview Elementary attendance boundary. We wanted to give members of each of these focus groups an opportunity to learn more about the process and to share expectations about their role in the process, so we held a focus group orientation on November 27th. During the orientation, we explained that the role of the focus group would be to review preliminary boundary options in alignment with Board Policy FC Local and to provide input that staff would use to refine options before sharing with the full community for further feedback. The focus groups met on separate evenings to review options and provide input following the orientation. Ultimately, the focus groups not only provided useful input on the preliminary options, asked important questions about the process and the individual campuses, they also helped to create additional options. The Elementary 51 focus group met on the 28th of November, and the High School Balancing focus group met on the 29th. Following the focus group for high school, members requested a second meeting, and that meeting convened again last week to review questions and provide further input on the high schools in the southeast portion of the district. During the week of December 10th, we will present the boundary options to the community online and hold 3 information meetings. The meetings will be held in 3 areas of the district, starting at Marshall High School on December the 11th, Travis High School on Wednesday, December 12th, and Elkins High School on Thursday, December 13th. This presentation will be shared each night beginning at 7 p.m. in the auditorium of each school. The same video presentation will be posted online beginning December the 11th. Following this presentation, participants will have the opportunity to view boundary options on large maps in the cafeteria of each school and to provide feedback through an online survey. Staff will have iPads available for survey completion during the school meetings. The boundary presentations and online survey will be available online at fortbendisd.com/boundary planning, December the 11th through January the 2nd. Scott Leopold with Cooperative Strategies will now share the boundary options that will be presented to the community for feedback.
Thank you, Beth. This is Scott Leopold of Cooperative Strategies, and I will be taking you through the details of the options developed around the new elementary school, number 51 in the Aliana area. I want to start by just quickly reviewing some of the feedback we collected from the focus groups. One of the points was that they would like to see everybody attend his or her closest school. If an existing school is going to see an increase in students due to a boundary option, we would like to see an addition on that building before the students begin to enroll, should the building be over capacity based on its current structure. We would also like to see additional capacity in this area beyond what is currently funded. This slide shows the northwest area of the district, and so this is where we have our Elementary 51 located, south of the intersection of West Airport and 99. The background colors represent the existing elementary zones. The thick purple lines represent the high school zones, and the medium-sized orange lines represent the middle school zones. Just for some reference, this is Route 99, and then we have 1464. It comes up all the way to the north of the district. West Airport right here, this is the current line that delineates Austin High School and Travis High School. We also have West Belfort right here, going through Aliana, and then Bissonnet is up here where Hodges Bend Middle School and Holly are located. Just a little more detail, the current Madden boundary is outlined by my laser right here in the rose color. And then we have Oyster Creek over here in the mustard color. It has a detached zone down here, which is Orchard Lake Estates. We also have in brown here the current Lakeview zone, and so it currently splits between Sugar Land Middle School in Kempner and Garcia Middle School in Austin over here on this side. We have Walker Station down here in the purple, and then it has a detached zone right here, Windsor Estates, which also feeds to Satartia, and then onto Austin with the rest of Walker Station. Neal Elementary is here in the green, Pecan Grove in the blue, Oakland in the yellow, and then Patterson up here in the yellow as well, and then Holly here in the brown color. And so that gives you just an idea of the schools that we'll be talking about as we go through these options. This table shows the data that we'll be talking about with the schools in this part of the district. We'll be using design capacity to determine whether or not a school is under or overutilized. If a school is less than 80% of its design capacity, it's going to be considered underutilized, and then highlighted in blue in the utilization section of the table. If it's over 100%, it's considered overutilized, and it'll be between 100 and 105% in the pink, and over 105% will be in the darker pink or the red. Please keep in mind that the numbers that we're using are live-in populations only, and so they don't include any transfers for pre-K or bilingual or ELL programs. Looking at the overall utilization of the elementary schools, as you can see, we have quite a large amount of red in these charts. If we look at our utilization overall, we're projected to go between 92 and 101% utilization by the 25-26 school year, reaching 105% in 28-29. That's even with our addition at Madden, addition at Neal, and new construction of a 1,000 student station elementary school at Elementary 51. So we know we're going to need some additional capacity in this area. Moving on to middle schools, you can see we have some projected overutilization at Bowie beginning in the 2023-24 school year at 103%, projected to go to 120% by the 28-29 school year. If we look at high schools, we have some underutilization at Kempner, below 80% all 10 years, and we start to see some overutilization at Travis, reaching 100% in 22-23, and then getting to 111% in 2028-29. This table shows our overall capacity in the area elementary schools and how it changes over the next 10 years. Lakeview will be rebuilt, opening in the 2021-22 school year for a capacity of 450. It should be noted that this school is being designed with a core for 600 students, and so it's got the ability to be expanded rather easily. Madden will receive an addition in the 2022-23 school year, bringing its capacity to 982. Neal will receive an addition in the 2020-21 school year, bringing its capacity to 1,211 students. Elementary number 51 will open in January of 2020, and so the students will begin the school year at a different school or schools, and then they'll move mid-year into the new Elementary 51. I would just like to touch on some key points before we start to go into the options. Again, the design capacities do not include any portable buildings. It should be noted that the capacity to Elementary 51 plus the addition of Madden is not enough to serve all the students in the current Madden boundary long term. So we're going to have to utilize capacity to other schools. Due to the location of Oakland relative to its students and other schools, we may need to consider an addition to replace the 6 portable buildings on that site in the future. Again, overall, we're projected to reach 101% of the overall design capacity in 2025-26 if we look at all the schools as a whole. We're not going to be able to eliminate all the red in our charts 10 years out, but if we want to push it, but we do want to push it out as far as possible. Also keep in mind that planning is not a one-time event, and we'll have to consider additional capacity in this area in the future. One last point is, as you go through these options, remember that we're not voting on a complete package. We're talking about the components of them, and as we collect the feedback, we'll be asking you to consider the overall option as a whole as well as the individual parts. And keep in mind that as we review this feedback, we may combine pieces of options, and so it's okay if you don't like one portion of the option. We'd like to know what specifically you like or do not like about an option. This is option 1. We'll start with the existing boundaries, and then we'll fade on the changes, and then we'll look at the changes with the existing boundaries faded out, and then we'll highlight the change areas. So let's start with Patterson. Patterson's proposed boundary would be this yellow outlined area here. Should be noted that right now Patterson is one of those schools that splits. So the students to the north would go to Patterson, Crockett, and Bush, and the students south right here go to Patterson, Bowie, Travis. And so under this option, they would all go to Patterson, Crockett, and Bush. The main area that's impacted would be right here. This is the northern portion of Aliana, and again, they would feed Patterson, Crockett, Bush. Moving over to Holly over here, the areas that move into Holly from Patterson would be Mission Sierra and Mission Trace. They would all feed to Holly, and then Hodges Bend Middle School, and then on to Kempner High School. Looking at the Madden boundary outlined in this red color here, it would be probably 90% no transportation school. The only area that would get transported to this school are these students here north of West Belfort. Looking at Elementary 51, it would be in this blue area here. It would be all of Madden, currently south of West Airport, with the addition of Old Orchard and Chelsea Harbor. And so all of those students would feed to Elementary 51, Garcia, and then to Austin. Looking at Oyster Creek would pick up portions of Aliana east of 1464, and also this area that's currently zoned to Holly and Hodges Bend. It would also pick up Stratford Park from Lakeview, and Oyster Creek would feed 100% to Garcia and then to Austin. Looking at this area over here, this is what Lakeview's boundary would look like. The area in here doesn't have any students in it or projected, and so we have a little bit of cartographic liberty where we draw the line. But Lakeview would maintain its current boundary with the exception of Chelsea Harbor and Stratford Park. And it would feed 100% to Sugarland Middle School and then to Kempner. And so this area currently zoned to Garcia and Austin would move to Sugarland and Kempner. We have this area up here in purple, which is currently zoned to Fleming at the elementary level, and then to Garcia and Austin. In this option, we would zone them to Hodges Bend and Kempner. Lastly, we have this area over here, which is projected to grow and expand out of Harvest Green. It's too many students to stay in Neal, even with its addition, and so in this option, we have them zoned to Pecan Grove, with an addition going on to Pecan Grove. We also show an addition on Oakland, even though we don't show any changes to the boundary. It would just be to replace the portables and serve the students that are in its current attendance area. Here's our data associated with option 1. Starting with Holly, you can see that we increased the utilization there from 62% to 99%, reaching 101% years 9 and 10. It should be noted that in this option, we'd need to phase out the bilingual program at Holly and reconstitute it at a different location. Lakeview would go from 78% down to 47%, which is good because we can reduce that enrollment while we rebuild the school. And then it will gradually grow back up to 80% in its new facility. Madden would go from 169%, if all the students that lived in its zone today went there, down to 94%, back up to 100, and then 105. And then once its addition comes online, we're down to 85% and up to 96% in year 10. Looking at Neal goes from 88% to 94%, and then passes 100% in 2026-27. Looking at Oakland, as you can see, we have the need for an addition here. We haven't made any changes to the boundary. And so now we've shown an addition coming online in 2023-24, which would have to be included in a future bond program. And so that would reduce our utilization down to 95%. If we look at Oyster Creek would be better utilized at 100%, gently phasing down over time. Looking at Patterson, it would go from 81% down to 55%, and then it would come right back up over time. Pecan Grove would go from 84% to 97% to 109 to 121, and then we put the addition online in 23-24, and then we're right back around 100%. Walker Station is unchanged in this option. And then we show Elementary 51 opening at 61% to 74 to 86 to 95, up to about 105% in year 10. Looking at the middle schools, we've reduced the overutilization at Bowie and pushed it out much further, and so we start to hit 101% in 26-27. Looking at the high schools, we've helped to balance things here. If you recall, if we didn't make any changes, we were going to have overutilization at Travis. By moving that area currently at Holly to Kempner, we bring Kempner up to 83%, 90%, 95, and then up to 103, 105, and then starting back down. Travis, we keep under 100% all 10 years of the projection. Moving on to option 2, here's the existing boundaries. Here's the changes for option 2. Now we've faded back the existing boundaries and highlighted our change areas. And so starting at the top again, Patterson would be in the yellow outlined area, and it would feed 100% to Crockett and Bush. We'd pick up Mission Sierra. Mission Trace, along with this future undeveloped land, would go to Holly, Hodges Bend, and then to Bush. We'd also pick up kind of this northeast corner of Aliana, which would also go to Holly, Hodges Bend, and Bush. Madden would be left in this red outlined area, and it would feed 100% to Garcia and then on to Austin, which would be a change. One thing to point out here is that we've kind of drawn this line to include this area that is in close proximity to Madden due to walkability, but all of this area here that is in this option is zoned to 51 is also walkable to Madden. And so these students would have to be transported to Elementary 51 even though they're walkable to Madden. And so the area north of Airport would go to Elementary 51, Garcia, and Travis, and south of Airport would go to Elementary 51, Garcia, and Austin. If we move on to Oyster Creek, the changes here, this area is Old Orchard, and it would move to Oyster Creek. Stratford Park would also move to Oyster Creek, and Chelsea Harbor would also move to Oyster Creek. We'd also pick up this area in Holly, which would also move down to Oyster Creek, and Oyster Creek would feed 100% into Garcia and Austin. We pick up this area that is on the eastern edge of Oyster Creek. It would move into Lakeview and then also feed 100% into Sugar Land and Kempner. But in order to make all of that work, we'd have to have an addition at Lakeview. Again, like the previous option, we would align this feeder pattern bust here. These students who currently feed to Fleming, Garcia, and Austin would feed to Fleming, and then change to Hodges Bend and Kempner. And again, we have our same changes out here with Pecan Grove. That area, currently part of Neal, would move to Pecan Grove, but it would require an addition. Looking at the data associated with option 2, we do a much better job again of utilizing Holly. We would go from 62% to 81% to 79, and then up to 98 to 95. Towards the end. The bilingual program could likely stay in the near term, but may need to be phased out over time as the utilization increases at Holly. Again, Lakeview, we go from 78% to 71 to 72, and then when the new facility is constructed, we're over capacity based on the boundary we have, so we need to have an addition here. Perhaps it could be built when the school is being initially constructed, or maybe it has to come online a couple years later. Madden would go from almost 170% to 99, back up to 105, 110, and then once its addition comes online, down to 89, and then back up to 100 over time. Looking at Neal would go from 88 again to 94, and then start to get up to 100, 105, 108% towards the end of the projection. Now we'll toggle on those additions, and so you can see our utilization at Oakland goes away once we have that addition online in 2023-24. Looking at Oyster Creek would be much better utilized, going from 76% up to 98, and staying in the 90s all 10 years. Patterson goes from 81% down to 70, 74, and then starts to head back up towards the end of the projection. Again, Pecan Grove, 109%, 121, 127, and then once its addition would come online, it would be down around 100. Walker Station, again, unchanged in this option. Elementary 51 would open at 47%, 61, 74, and then would never see 100% in the 10 years, but would be in the high 80s, low 90s. Looking at the middle schools, again, we help to reduce that overutilization at Bowie. We do increase utilization over time at Crockett. Looking at the high schools, we've got really good balance here. We don't show any high schools over 100% in all 10 years of the projection. We get Travis down into the low 90s towards the end. This is option 3, and so we'll start with the existing boundaries, toggle on the changes, and then back off the existing boundaries to show our change areas. So starting with Patterson, Patterson stays relatively unchanged, and so Mission Sierra and Mission Trace would both stay at Patterson. We would take the kind of southern portion of Patterson, which doesn't have any students in it currently. They would move from Patterson to Holly, Hodges Bend, and then to Bush. What's different about this option is how we draw the boundary for Elementary 51. We actually have 2 sections of the boundary for Elementary 51. And so we'd have one section that's south of Airport, and they would feed 100% to 51, Garcia and Austin. And then this portion north would feed to Garcia and Travis. And so it would be a split. But it should be noted that what we have left at Madden here is a 100% no transportation to school. And so all the students in this zone for Madden would be able to walk to Madden. They would then feed to Garcia and Travis. Looking at Oyster Creek Creek would pick up these areas that are currently Aliana, that are south of West Airport, and also Old Orchard. And then Oyster Creek would feed 100% to Garcia and Austin. It should be noted that Lakeview in this scenario has no changes, so Stratford Park and Chelsea Harbor would both remain at Lakeview, and Lakeview would definitely need an addition to maintain its current boundary. That eastern portion of Oyster Creek that we had going to Lakeview and some other options, in this option they would go to Fleming and then feed to Hodges Bend and Kempner. And again, looking over towards the west, we still have those same changes at Pecan Grove with the addition, and also the addition at Oakland. So in this scenario, we would need an addition at Patterson to kind of maintain its current zone. The addition at Oakland, the addition at Pecan Grove, and the addition at Lakeview. Here's our data for option 3. We've brought Fleming into the equation, and so Fleming would go from 71% to 86 and would stay in the low 90s. Holly would still remain relatively underutilized. We did not put a lot of growth into this school. We didn't move any large groups of existing students, but did point that future growth into Holly. So Holly would go into 62, 60, 58, and then it would start to come back up at the end as that growth came in. This would allow Holly to maintain its bilingual program that it currently has in place. Lakeview, with its current boundary, would go 78%, 77, and then when the schools are placed smaller, it would go down to 100. It would go up to 109%. So now we'll toggle on those additions, and you can see it drops to 89%. Looking at Madden would go from 169% to 82, 88, 93, and then its addition comes online, and it's 75, 77, 79, and then up into the 80s. Looking at Neal again, 88, 94, 99, and then it starts up to 100% towards the end of the projection. Oakland, we still show the need for that addition. Oyster Creek goes from 76 up to right around 100% and remains stable. Patterson would go 81%, 87, 90, 96, 102, and then it would get its addition and it would come back down into the 90s. Looking at Pecan Grove again, 109, 121, 127, and then down right around 100% with an addition. Walker Station still unchanged in this option. Elementary 51 would open relatively low, 45%, 58, 70, 78, and then would get back up into the high 80s by year 10. We do have a little bit of imbalance towards the end at the middle schools. Bowie 101%, Garcia 101%. Looking at the high schools, We start to see Bush kind of creep up towards the end there at 101 to 102%, and Kempner still stays relatively low in this option. Here's option 4. We'll start with the existing zones, toggle on the changes, fade back the existing zones, and then highlight the areas that would move. So we'll start with Patterson. So the new Patterson boundary will be outlined in this yellow area here. Mission Trace, Mission Sierra would continue to go to Patterson, but we would align them with Crockett and Bush. Currently they're going to Bowie and Travis. The next area would be this area that is currently pointed to Patterson. We would have it go to Holly, Hodges Bend, and then remain at Travis. And so this includes that area currently zoned to Patterson, along with all of Madden that is currently north of West Belfort. And so they would feed to Holly and Hodges Bend, and then go back to Travis for high school, where they're currently zoned. Looking at Oyster Creek, we have this section that is south of West Belfort and east of 1464. They would go to Oyster Creek, along with Old Orchard and Stratford Park. Oyster Creek would feed 100% into Garcia and Austin. Moving on to 51, everybody south of Airport and Madden would go to 51, with the exception, of course, of Old Orchard, which would go to Oyster Creek. We would also take the area that is currently zoned to Neal, that Pecan Grove growth area, and we would zone it to Elementary 51, but it would stay at Bowie and Travis. And so we would have a split at 51 at 99. West of 99 would go 51 Bowie Travis, east of 99 would go 51 Garcia Austin. We also have a portion down here south of what is currently Neal that shows some growth towards the end of the projection. We would align that with Brazos Bend, Bowie and Travis. Last area here to talk about, or one of the last areas, would be Chelsea Harbor. Again, it's currently zoned to Lakeview. In this option, they would go to Walker Station and then to Satartia and Austin. And so that's this area outlined in purple. In order to do this, we'd have to put an addition on Walker Station. Looking at Lakeview, Lakeview would again pick up that eastern portion of Oyster Creek, and they would feed to Lakeview, Sugar Land, and then Kempner for high school. Lakeview would need an addition. And lastly, we have that feeder split that we currently have, where these students are going to Fleming for elementary and then to Garcia and Austin. We would align them to Hodges Bend and Kempner with the rest of Fleming. Here's our data associated with option 4. We've added Brazos Bend onto this, and so you can see towards the end we do have an increase at Brazos Bend. Holly goes from 62% up to the 90s 5 years out, and then 102, 106, 110. And so again, we could probably maintain that bilingual program as is for the next few years, but it may need to phase out over time. Looking at Lakeview, Lakeview would be 78%, 71, 72, and then when its new capacity is reduced, we're at 107. Now we'll toggle on those additions. So Lakeview, 107, 113, and then down into the high 80s, low 90s. Madden, 169, 82, 88, 93. This addition comes online, it's in the 70s for a few years, and then back up into the 80s. Neal, 88, 94, 99, and then its addition comes online, and it's in good shape. Oakland, again, overutilized, and then we get that addition online, 23, 24, and it's in good shape. Oyster Creek, 76, 100%, and then it stays right between 90 and 100 all the way out. Patterson starts to creep up there, but then we get its addition, and it's in the 90s. Pecan Grove is unchanged in this option. Walker Station would go from 92 to 106 with that addition of Chelsea Harbor, and then when we have the addition, it's in the 80s or 90s. Elementary 51 would open low in this option, 37%. 59, 77, and then it never hits 100% all the way out. Good balance at the middle schools, a little bit of underutilization, but not too bad. The high schools are very well balanced, all in the high 80s to the 90s, all the way out. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation and learn more about the process and the options. I just want to hit a few key points before we turn you over to complete the survey to provide your feedback. Please remember that we are looking for detailed feedback related to these options. We'd love to find rationale and the reasons why you support or do not support an option. That way we can develop recommendations that align closer to what the community wants. The survey is going to ask you to provide your level of support for each option as a package as well as its component parts. That's also very important because there may be, you may not like the option as a whole, but there may be pieces of it that you like. And so that kind of feedback will allow us to combine desirable components of options into recommendations. So again, as you're providing your feedback, remember the more detail you can provide us, the more useful it is to us as a district. So now I'll turn it over to Beth to talk about next steps. Thank you.
As a reminder, our next steps include boundary presentations and feedback surveys that will be available online at fortbendisd.com/boundary planning from December the 11th through January 2nd. Community meetings held on December 11th, 12th, and 13th will feature the same boundary presentation and feedback survey that will be posted online for any community members who wish to attend in person. Following the community engagement process, staff will study and consider all feedback from the community and possibly refine options further based on this community feedback. During January, we expect to take recommendations for the Elementary 51 boundary to the board for consideration, and in February, provide an update around the high school enrollment boundary planning process and provide recommendations for board consideration. Thank you very much for engaging in this very important work, for taking time to engage around the various boundary options, and most importantly, for providing feedback and input throughout this process.